Have you ever wondered where your thoughts come from? That sudden insight, that flash of inspiration, that idea that appears out of nowhere, as if whispered to your soul. Are these thoughts just chemical reactions in the brain? Or could they be something more, something sacred? Could our thoughts in their finest form be a kind of revelation? In this video, we'll explore the deep philosophy of Islam around the nature of thoughts, ideas, and inspiration. We'll ask, do our thoughts connect us to the divine? And what does the Quran say about the unseen world of inner reflection? Thoughts are invisible. They leave no trace, yet they shape entire civilizations. One thought built the pyramids. One idea changed the world through a prophet. One reflection led to entire scientific revolutions. But where do these thoughts originate? Are they merely neurons firing randomly? Or is there a deeper, more metaphysical source? In the Islamic worldview, the heart and mind are not just biological organs. They are spiritual receivers. Many people assume that revelation is only something granted to prophets, but the Quran broadens this idea. In Surah Ash-Shura, Surah 42, verse 51, Allah says, "It is not fitting for a human being that Allah should speak to them except by inspiration, from behind a veil, or through a messenger." This verse opens the door. It tells us that divine communication isn't limited to formal prophethood. Inspiration can come in subtle forms, through inner realization, signs, or reflection. In Surah Fussilat, Surah 41, verse 53, Allah declares, "We will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth." What are these inner signs? Sometimes a random thought carries profound clarity. Sometimes a sleepless night is filled with ideas that feel beyond us. This verse reminds us that within our own minds are signs, echoes of divine truth. Your thoughts aren't always just yours. Sometimes they are nudges from beyond. In Islamic tradition, there's a concept called Ilham, inspired thought. Not revelation like prophets receive, but a personal form of divine guidance. In Surah Ash-Shams, Surah 91, verse 8, Allah says, "He inspired the soul with its knowledge of right and wrong." This is profound. The human soul is pre-programmed with moral awareness, but that awareness often speaks to us in the language of thought, a feeling, a realization, a sudden insight that pulls us toward the right action. Ilham is that moment when your heart knows without words. Think of the greatest inventions, the most beautiful poetry, the most powerful speeches. Where did they come from? In Islam, knowledge is not just accumulated, it is granted. Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2, verse 282 says, "And fear Allah, and Allah will teach you, and Allah is knowing of all things." This verse flips the modern narrative. It tells us that conscious alignment with the divine opens the doors of knowledge. When we cleanse the heart, purify the intention, and seek truth sincerely, ideas flow. Not from the ego, but from the unseen. But here's a critical point. Not every thought is sacred. Not every idea is a revelation. Our mind is a battlefield between ego and soul, between divine whispers and worldly noise. In Surah An-Nas, Surah 114, verse 4 through 5, we are reminded to seek protection from the whisperer who whispers into the hearts of mankind. So how do we tell the difference? Divine thoughts are often calm, wise, selfless, and full of light. Ego-driven thoughts are impulsive, loud, and rooted in fear or pride. The more we purify our inner world, the more clearly we can hear the whispers from the divine. Prophets are the ultimate example of divine thought in human form, but their way of thinking wasn't irrational, it was supra-rational. In Surah Al-Anbiya, Surah 21, verse 7, Allah says, "Ask those who have knowledge if you do not know." Islam doesn't oppose questioning, but it teaches us to seek knowledge that is both intellectually honest and spiritually rooted. Prophetic thinking balances logic with intuition, facts with faith, and the mind with the heart. This balance is the model for how Muslims should think, deeply, reflectively, and in tune with the higher order. Imagine the mind as a mirror. If it's clouded by desires, fears, and ego, the reflection is distorted. But if it's polished through worship, reflection, and sincerity, it begins to reflect truth. In Surah Al-A'raf, Surah 7, verse 179, Allah mentions that some have hearts they don't use to understand. They have hearts with which they do not understand, eyes with which they do not see, and ears with which they do not hear. They are like cattle, even more astray. The tragedy is not in lacking a mind, but in not using it to seek what's higher. Your thoughts can either lead you to distraction or to divine presence. So is our thoughts a form of revelation? Not all of them, but some. Some are sacred. Some are gifts, glimmers, whispers from beyond the veil. When the heart is sincere, when the soul is still, when the mind is open, then inspiration comes. In a world full of noise, listen for the quiet voice within. You just might find that your best thoughts were never entirely your own. Subscribe to Divine Paradox for more explorations on Islamic philosophy, consciousness, and the unseen.